Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Super Tease video. And there was a recent update, a massive amount of changes to classes in Shadowlands. I'm breaking it down into segments, and in this video, I will be covering Demon Hunter, Mage, Priest, and Shaman, as I felt that these were the most impacted. And I was receiving questions while I was streaming asking, is this the end for these specializations? Some of these changes were very dramatic overall. So we'll be going over those ones, the most impactful ones. We'll just start off right away with the Demon Hunter. So Demon Hunters have a legendary being buffed here called Chaos Theory. Blade Dance has a 30% chance now to grant you Chaotic Blades, increasing the damage of your Chaos Strike by 50%, and its chance to refund Fury by an additional 60%. These are much larger numbers than a lot of the other legendaries available for Demon Hunter at the moment. It could have synergies with the Essence Break talent that they're trying to bring into the fold. However, with changes in the Soulbind conduits that you can literally see right here, maybe that's not going to be the case, or maybe they were aware that this could have too good of a synergy, because the Soulbind Conduit Dancing with Fate, which previously Blade Dance had a 5% chance to apply Essence Break, is now instead the final slash of Blade Dance deals an additional 10% damage and will scale up at a much larger magnitude, up to 24% more damage at max conduit rank. This is a much more straightforward conduit. It just makes one of your abilities do a little bit more damage. And it's one that you press a lot with Blade Dance instead of trying to force it into this Essence Break build where maybe if it didn't proc or its proc rate was too low, you wouldn't see it happen, maybe too much RNG. So looks like the route of just consistency, which honestly, I feel like Demon Hunter, at least in PvP, needed, especially with some other things that are going on with it that I think are going to potentially limit its potential in PvP. In Mythic Plus, I think it's still going to be a strong class, just having Chaos Brand for increased magic damage to the targets, good cleave with Eye Beam and Blade Dance. I feel like it's unlikely for Demon Hunter to really underperform, at least when it comes to Mythic Plus, because its kit is so well built for just area of effect damage. But in Arena, that area of effect damage can be impactful, but it's not everything. Usually your consistent single target or your burst single target matters a lot more in PvP, and that's where Demon Hunter is lacking a bit, especially after some other changes that have been undergone. Nothing really massive here, just minor tweaks to the final tier of these conduits. So Chaos Strike has a 5% chance to trigger a second Chaos Strike, down from 15 to 14.5. These aren't massive, at least not nearly as impactful as these other conduit changes. For Vengeance, we see the conduits, one of their conduits, Demon Muzzle. When Sigil of Silence effects ends, affected enemies deal 5% reduced magic damage to you for 8 seconds, up from 6, but they've reduced the scaling on it. And again, this is likely because getting up to 20% magic damage reduction with the tattoos passive of Vengeance Demon Hunter, and Vengeance already being the number one tank, I feel like, at the moment, this is probably too good. So making it last a little bit longer, but reducing its overall damage reduction. And this, again, is only for Vengeance. Soul Furnace, every 10 soul fragments you consume increases the damage of your next soul cleave by 30%, up from 15, and it scales twice as hard. So they really want this soul cleave burst maybe to be an option for you. Again, conduits are a new feature of Shadowlands. They're like glyphs or gems that you put into your little talent tree, and these are just constantly yo-yoing up and down, and they're causing one of the biggest stress points in my mind for the expansion, because, well, do I pick the one that is fun? Do I pick the one that's currently the best? Do I pick the one that's the worst that I think's going to get buffed to be the best, because that's a trend that happens a lot? You're kind of left in a weird position when it comes to this. So depending on how useful Soul Cleave is, this is a very big increase, but it is only to 1 Soul Cleave after you've consumed 10 Soul Fragments. And here we go. This is the big change for Havoc, at least. Also, I mean, all Demon Hunter specs, but Sinful Brand basically nerfed in half. This is brand an enemy with the Mark of the Venthyr, reducing their melee attack speed by 30%, their casting speed by 30%, and inflicting a shadow dot, which was 520% of your attack power, now only 338% of your attack power. It could be applied from activating Metamorphosis. And in PvP, and I would think PvE too, with how high it was in my overall percent damage, this was like the number one go-to, and this is where I'm not surprised. this Covenant was doing a lot of damage. Everyone was picking it. Now it's got nerfed. Now things need to kind of sort themselves out. Which one's going to rise to the top? And then it's just a feeding frenzy. So if you were looking forward to the Venthyr Covenant, this is a pretty massive nerf. I feel like this is one of those specs where people are like, is this going to be the end of Demon Hunter? On my stream, twitch.tv/SuperTease, I'm going to be playing through all the specializations and still trying to make these work and see how it performs now. But this is, again, yet a massive nerf. Brooding Pool, the increases the duration of the Fodder of the Flame. So the pool on the ground from the Necrolord, looks like they scaled it down so it doesn't last as long at max rank, only 12 seconds down from 20. So interesting. The Brooding Pool potentially doing good damage, although that Covenant ability is a little bit strange. Summoning in the demon, killing it, and then dropping a puddle. They did try and offset the damage nerf to the Sinful Brand base ability by increasing the Conduit's effectiveness. Instead of reducing the cooldown of Sinful Brand by 1 second, it reduces it by 5. But then it also stacks up much slower. So at max rank, it's only 12 and not 15. So your initial value of this Conduit has gone up, but 5 seconds at its base. I mean, maybe in Mythic Plus that matters, but I feel like in PvP that this isn't as much of a trade-off as losing half of its damage. Repeat Decree, Elysian Decree echoes a second sigil 1 second later for 25% damage. Again, likely trying to bring down some of the potential here of Elysian Decree, just a nerf overall. Shattered Restoration. The Endurance Conduit, the healing of shattered souls is increased by 5%, down from 10. It's weird to me that I'm wondering if these targeted nerfs, I mean, this is obviously affects Vengeance too, right? Because you're going to not be healing so much from shattered souls, but Havoc also heals from shattered souls. And there's like this weird balance of some specs healing is being reduced dramatically, like Deathstrike on Death Knight doesn't heal as much. Demon Hunter's Leech healing is being reduced. But then to counterbalance that, they're increasing the healing of Word of Glory. So it's Lay on Hands, and they're making Mage Barrier shield you for 70% of your health. And it's just like, so is it a problem that these specs are too self-sustainable, but then you're shifting that onto the other specs so that they're now more self-sustainable? In my mind, it just kind of trivializes healers in PvE to have DPS specs heal for so much. And then in PvP, it trivializes it and it extends the durations of matches for no reason and creates kind of a boring, dampening gameplay in PvP. So while I think that this is a good change because Vengeance is really good and then Havoc's healing will be lower, I really hope they address the other ones too, because when we get to them, for mages in particular, and even Shadow Priest, I think it is a problem. Unnatural Malice, Potency Conduit increases the damage of the Hunt Strike against your primary target by 25%, and this scales up to now 60%, so it's a really big burst damage on a single target. And then Thrive in Chaos was just, this is nothing. All right, and that's it for Demon Hunter. So Vengeance overall, little bit of a slight tweak down in survivability, but overall likely still remains a very strong Mythic Plus tank. Havoc got reduced significantly in power. I don't think it was competing with Outlaw Rogue and Subtlety Rogue or Frost Mage in Mythic Plus. I think right now it's literally only Frost Mage. And then in PvP, yeah, Havoc is like a pick it at your own risk right now of a spec. But let's get into Shaman. This is another one that's receiving a significant portion of changes. Some good, some bad. Some are like, I don't understand what's going on. This PvP talent, Control the Lava. Now, instead of Lava Burst damage is increased by 30%, it's Flame Shock. Your Flame Shock damage over time has a 10% chance to reset the remaining cooldown. And to my knowledge, this was an honor talent that made it so you have to hard cast your Lava Burst every time. I don't know if that's going to remain true, if this means that Lava Burst is now still instant, but you get more Flame Shock damage in PvP, because this is obviously a PvP-focused change. Flame Shock is dispellable. So if this ends up being a go-to build, then you will have to play with Affliction Locks to protect your Flame Shock with Unstable Affliction, because a good healer will see when you've put Flame Shock up and had time to buff it over time, and then it starts doing a lot of damage and will remove it. So this is already a talent that wasn't really taken, and it's like weird that it got like this attention to it. I'm curious to see how it plays out and try it out, but it just seemed a little bit weird. Legendary effects here. We are going to see a nerf to the Earthquake legendary. Echoes of Great Sundering. When you cast Earthshock, your next Earthquake will deal only 170%, 5% additional damage. Again, you hate to see a nerf there because obviously I think in Mythic Plus for Elemental, your Earthquake is important for Trash Pull, so Elemental getting a nerf. I mean, in the pre-patch, I think it would make sense, but I'm not so sure in actual Shadowlands because I don't really see a lot of class diversity right now, especially in Mythic Plus at least. Maybe in the raid, this is where it's being addressed, but regardless, Skybreaker's Fiery Demise, Flame Shock damage over time, critical strikes, reduce the cooldown of your elementals, and Flame Shock has a 50% increased chance to critically strike. So trying to again equalize out the legendaries, which is really hard to do because some of these legendaries are AoE, some of these legendaries are cooldown burst windows, some of these legendaries are sustained single target. And how do you make an AoE legendary compete with a single target legendary when AoE is just better in terms of math? You hitting more targets, you're doing more damage. You can't make a single target legendary compete with an AoE one without making the single target ridiculous in single target. This seems like an unachievable goal, but they're still trying to get them all down to the same. And then also now the Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence, which was taken pretty frequently, at least in PvP. Can't speak so much to Mythic Plus, but when you cast Earthshock, you gain Lava Surge, and it increases the damage of your next Lava Burst by 20%, down from 30%. So Elemental overall looks like it's, I mean, in my mind, I look at it, it looks like it's kind of getting weaker, but now when we move down to the Soulbinds, perhaps not. The Call of Flame Soulbind means your fire elemental lasts 35% longer. So it seems like they're really trying to make this one more appealing. Maybe people were just never taking this. So more crit chance on your Flame Shock. Your fire elemental lasts longer, which means you get more crit chance on your Flame Shock. I mean, maybe this is where they're trying to go to try and force that legendary to have some usage. High Voltage. Lightning Bolt has only a 25% chance to generate double Maelstrom. In PvP, you're almost never casting Lightning Bolt unless it's with Stormkeeper. It's just really, it's almost like Shadow Bolt for Affliction Warlock. You just take it off your bar. It's too slow of a cast, doesn't do anything, and you just run the risk of being interrupted on it. So in PvP, you don't care about this. In PvE, it's slight nerf. More importantly, the scaling on it was nerfed as well. Now at max rank, only 40% double. It's down from 60. And then this Fire Elemental will last 50% longer. It seems like they want that Fire Elemental one to start getting some play. And that's, in my mind, that's bad for the trend of changes. I mean, fortunately, the expansion is delayed. So in real time, you're not going to pick one legendary and this happens where the other one gets buffed. And you're like, hey, I picked this one because I thought it was good. Now you made it bad. And then you made that other one good. And I would have got the other one, but you didn't tell me. And this is where the anxiety comes in for all of the systems that are happening layered on top of each other with Covenant Choice, Soulbind Choice, and Legendary Choice. So this is a bit alarming to me when it's like massive increases like this and influxes. Pyroclastic Shock, Potency Conduit. Earthshock has a 15% chance to extend the duration of your Flame Shock on an enemy by 12 seconds. Again, it seems like there's a lot of emphasis on this Flame Shock, right? Like even this Honor talent, get your Flame Shock to do more damage, then this legendary to increase its critical strike chance, and then another legendary to increase its duration. It's like they're trying to like get that going, like some sort of a Flame Shock Fire Elemental build. Maybe they will, but it's hard to spread Flame Shock particularly, so this is maybe be only good for single target. And then in PvP, you run the downside of that Flame Shock being dispelled on a single target. Shake the Foundations, Potency Conduit. Earthquake has only a 10% chance to instantly cast Chain Lightning at a random enemy. So you can see like bringing the overall strength of this Earthquake build down, bringing up this Flame Shock build is happening to Elemental at the moment. And the scaling got nerfed pretty hard on this one too, 30% down to 20% chance at max rank, which you won't see for a while. Now Enhancement is one that's really odd. They buffed Wind Fury. I guess they were taking the feedback, like Wind Fury came back, but it doesn't do anything. So Wind Fury is doing a lot more there, 32% of attack power. And more importantly, this legendary, dropping Wind Fury Totem grants you a 100% chance to gain Wind Fury weapon and increases the Wind Fury weapon damage by 100% for 12 seconds. When this first came out, people were literally one-shotting each other, and they nerfed that pretty quickly. It could still be powerful. And I'm thinking more specifically in PvP than PvE likely, where you can crowd control a healer, right? So something like if you're playing with Mistweaver Monk, Mistweaver can paralyze the healer, you drop Wind Fury, boom, you've got damage. Wind Fury doesn't have a cooldown, right? Oh, well, it does have an internal cooldown of 1 minute. So you wouldn't, Then it makes your Wind Fury weird. You don't want to put your Wind Fury totem down to like buff you. You want to just like save it. I mean, it's called Doom Winds. It's basically making it feel like your Wind Fury totem is your Doom Winds button. And maybe they're trying to bring back that mechanic, because in my mind, ever since Enhancement lost Doom Winds, it was like just kind of like, it does damage. It doesn't really live. It's kind of bad. So it's trying to bring back that gameplay a little bit. But then you lose the kind of maintenance part of Wind Fury Totem, and the cool effects of like trying to keep Wind Fury down in the target at all times. So it's a little bit of a weird trade-off in my mind, but it was doing a lot of damage. So if you were worried about like damage output, it was doing a lot. Legacy of the Frost Witch. Consuming 5 strikes of Maelstrom Weapon will reset the cooldown of Storm Strike, and your next Storm Strike to deal only 15% increased damage. So again, massive swing of legendary power, down from 100%. Primal Lava Actuators. Each time Flame Shock deals periodic damage, increase the damage of your next Lava Lash by 12%, up from 10, and reduce the cooldown of Lava Lash by 0.5 seconds. So it's like you can build yourself around Storm Strike enhance, a Lava Lash enhance. Like you're basically like picking one spell of your spec, it seems like the theme is, and then enhance the crap out of that one spell. This is going to have varying degrees of success if that's the plan, because some of these spells are really good in PvE, and then some of them are not good in PvP. So if you build your class around buffing that one spell in PvP, great, you're performing real well in PvP. But then in PvE, you're going to suffer, and those things could accumulate a lot over time. And again, I'm still worried about it being balanced overall. Witch Doctor's Wolf Bones increases the chance to gain a stack of Maelstrom Weapon by 3%, down from 5%. And whenever you gain a stack of Maelstrom Weapon, the cooldown of your Feral Spirits is reduced by 2 seconds. Okay, so again, bringing down some of the power of the legendaries that were being taken frequently, and then completely changing and buffing slightly some of the other ones. Soulbind Conduits. This was a big nerf. Focused Lightning, Potency Conduit, Maelstrom Weapon increases the damage or healing of your next spell by an additional 1%, down from 4% per stack. This was one of the things that was making Enhancement viable in PvP in Shadowlands at the moment, and it's scaling now. Max rank is only 4.5% per stack, down from 10. I mean, it was obviously a bit over the top, because your Chain Harvest at 5 stack Maelstrom with this conduit was 4 times 5, 20% more damage. And then Chain Harvest also got nerfed, which we'll get to. They're taking down all the things that made Enhancement cheesy good, right? Which in a way is good, but then what are they getting in return? Right now, it doesn't seem like much. So a little bit sad about that. Other than like that cheesy you're trading your cheese for a different cheese. You get the Doom Winds one now instead. Magma Fist, Potency Conduit. Lava Lash has an additional 15% increased critical strike chance against enemies. Flame Shock down from 25%, and the scaling cut in half. I think the scaling cut in half is them actually like, this was just like a random number, and now it's like, oh yeah, it's a real number. Some of these like scaling effects, because I can imagine like they probably didn't care like what the number was at max rank, because we're not going to get to max rank for a long time, right? So now they're bringing this all in line, which is good, because it makes it seem at least that they were coming towards the end of all of this. But Unruly Winds. Wind Fury Weapon now only has a 20% chance to trigger a third attack, down from 40%, potentially because of synergies with that Doom Winds legendary. And it's only going to go up to a 35%, which is lower than its original base value. And now Restoration Shaman getting some big nerfs to specific legendaries. The most important one here being Earthen Harmony. Earth Shield healing is increased by 150. It was nerfed in half, but now the target only needs to be below 75% health, and Healing Wave will still add a stack of Earth Shield to the target. This was a legendary used by all specs of Shaman basically in PvP. You might still as enhance use it, depending on if that Doom Winds legendary or any of these legendaries that do damage kind of like get gutted down and lukewarm and don't really do much, and then it becomes more important to pick things that heal you and keep you alive, which is kind of what happened with BFA in PvP, where offensive things were nerfed heavily and then defensive things were left unchecked, because how do you meme defense, right? Like, it's really hard to meme defense. You don't like explode a YouTube video of like, this guy takes less damage. You could, but it's a lot less obvious than, whoa, that one shot the guy. So things that are offensive usually get nerfed harder and faster than things that are defensive, and I'm very worried about that trend. But this was also really good for Resto Shaman. Makes it a bit more consistent, and it makes it synergize less with the Mastery, because for Resto Shaman specifically, if you heal a target that's low health, it heals for more. So 300% on a target that's low is way higher. Whereas now it triggers at a higher health, so it's more consistent through the health pool, but it's not as valuable at low health as it was previously. Which I think this legendary did need some tuning, and this one does make sense, but for enhancement and even elemental, your survivability in PvP is going to go down dramatically, even though this is actually a Resto legendary. Spirit Walker's Tidal Totem. After using Mana Tide, nothing has changed. Chain Heal and Healing Wave is reduced by 25% down from 100%. Probably in Raid, this is too good. Dropping your Mana Tide Totem and then spamming free heals was probably too good, so now it's not free. It's 25% on top of Mana Tide giving you mana back and making it free. It seems like this was probably just too good overall, at least when it came to PvE. Soulbind Conduits, Heavy Rainfall. Using Healing Tide Totem increases the healing of your healing rain only by 75%. This looks like raid tuning, right? And doesn't scale up as high anymore. Now only 145%, down from 300%. Nature's Focus, Potency Conduit. The primary target of your chain heal is now healed for an additional 10%. Scaling dramatically brought down from max strength from 80% to 20%. And this is going to increase the single target healing. So with this conduit, so if you're prioritizing who you're casting your banana beam on, this will benefit you the most. And then finally, we get to the Chain Harvest nerf, which was, again, 310% damage increased down to 205%. And this Covenant ability was straightforward for all Shaman specs, and it was just doing really good for all Shaman specs. And again, it was an AoE one, so it was good in PvE, and due to damage modifiers, it's also really good in PvP. Means that maybe Night Fae ends up being the really bursty one in PvP, as its Covenant ability does do a lot of burst damage, and we might see a shift in Covenants for Shaman overall as a result. We've got a couple more changes here, but Chains of Devastation, casting Chain Heal makes your next Chain Lightning instant cast and deal 50% increased damage. And then casting Chain Lightning makes your next Chain Heal instant cast and consume no mana. So this one, at first, I was like, oh, this could have some really cool synergies bouncing back and forth, but it wasn't really like eye-grabbing. 50% more damage, and then free mana cost for healing on your next. So you could use a 5-stack Maelstrom weapon for Chain Lightning, then get an instant cast Chain Heal that's free, and save your mana, because mana for healing on Elemental and Enhancement actually matters a lot, unlike a lot of other classes that just heal for free. But it's catching my eye more now. But I'm also a bit worried about it catching my eye because it's kind of weird. Soulbind Conduits, Elysian Dirge. Vesper Totem now only deals 40% more effective damage near its nearest target. This is a nerf to its single target potential. And its scaling was dramatically reduced from 200% increase down to 82% increase. Essential Extraction, Potency Conduit. Night Fae deals 30% increased damage and channels 30% increase faster, and its scaling was increased. I think in PvP, you're going to see a shift to Night Fae, because its burst damage was just about as good as Chain Harvest, and it just got buffed. So definitely going to be trying out Enhancement and maybe some Elemental Night Fae. All right, and that's it for Shaman. Let's get into Mage, the special love child at the moment, at least for Frost. When we get to it, it's pretty nuts. But for Arcane, we've got Conduit changes, Arcane Prodigy, Potency Conduit, Arcane Missiles reduces the cooldown of Arcane Power by 0.15, a slight little buff each time it deals damage, up from 0.1, but its scaling was dramatically reduced. So it's higher base value, lower scaling overall. But Arcane Missiles still remains to be a pretty important spell to the Arcane Mage, if not the most important, so this Conduit looks good. Artifice of the Archmage, Potency Conduit, your Arcane Barrage has a 4% chance to grant 58 Arcane charges, and that has to be a typo, because you don't have 58 possible charges, you only have 4. So I don't know what number that's supposed to be, the Illuminati math of trying to figure out what that is. 5 minus 2 is 3, and ignore the 8. I don't know, but it's a lower chance, but you'll get more orbs, and its scaling was dramatically reduced. Magi's Brand, Potency Conduit, Touch of the Magi accumulates an additional 6%, slight buff to Touch of the Magi. And its scaling, while it was slightly altered, it's basically the same. So just a slight buff to Touch of the Magi option. Really good for PvP, because Touch of the Magi is all of your burst damage to get a buff on this. But in PvE, probably got a buff because consistent things and AoE things are usually better. Nether Precision, Potency Conduit, consuming clear casting increases the damage of your next 2 Arcane Blasts by 6%, down from 10. And its scaling effect was reduced as well dramatically. So overall, Arcane, it's hard to say whether or not this is overall a buff or a nerf. It's like a slight readjustment in my mind for Arcane. Nothing really to worry about. Fire, controlled Soulbind Conduit changes. Controlled Destruction, Potency Conduit. Initial Pyroblast damage increased by 4% down from 5, and its scaling dramatically cut in half. It's a bit weird here. Fire getting some nerfs, at least in Shadowlands. It seems a bit weird. Flame Accretion, Potency Conduit Fireball only grants 2.5 mastery down from 5 when it fails to critically strike. Scaling dramatically reduced. Infernal Cascade, Potency Conduit while combustion is active, your Fire Blast grants you 10% damage up from 3. For 5 seconds, stacks only 2 times down from 3. So you get to the max stack before your combustion ends, basically, which is nice with this change, but it doesn't scale as high. But it's scaling at max when it gets higher. So, I mean, this one looks like it'd be really good in PvP. Potentially good in Mythic +2, as combustion is your really most important window of timing just in the game in general. This conduit is eye-grabbing to me a lot. Master Flame, Potency Conduit. Flame Strike's damage is increased by 8%, up from 6, and its radius is increased by 10%. And the scaling remains about the same. I was curious if there's a flame patch, kind of World in Flames PvP Flame Strike build for fire. Seems like the change to this is that Flame Strike is not too appealing maybe in PvE. But some nerfs to the single target, buffs to the burst window and AoE of fire. Some interesting changes here. Now, Frost, this is the one where things start to get crazy and start to not really make a lot of sense. Frozen Orb, I gotta be honest here, I don't know what this means. It originally did 160 damage, now it does 20 times 16.27% of spell power. It's in green, and I don't know if green does not always mean buff. So maybe it means now it scales with your gear, so its initial power without gear is lower by doing this, but as you get more spell power, its damage is gonna be higher. That's what I would take away from it, at least. The one that stands out the most here is the Soulbind Conduit's Ice Bite. Potency Conduit increased the damage of Ice Lance by 25%. Ice Lance was already their biggest hitting attack. It got buffed by 15%. Its scaling at max rank got increased by 10%. Okay. Mage is good. Icy Propulsion. Potency Conduit. While Icy Veins is active, your critical hits reduce the cooldown by 0.9, almost a whole second, as opposed to 0.25. Good if synergies with Thermal Void talent. And it got increased, and maybe Night Fae potentially for Frost to get more cooldown reduction. Shivering Core, Potency Conduit. Blizzard's damage is increased by 8%, and its movement speed reduction is increased by 10%. But Frost is getting buffed. And PvP, I don't want to be slowed by 200 million%. This is really weird to me. The scaling got slightly nerfed, but the initial buff is a lot better. Unrelenting Cold, Potency Conduit, Frozen Orb damage is increased by 15%, up from 10. And its scaling slightly reduced. What is going on? That was the best mage spec in like the whole game. PvE, PvP. I guess you're happy if you're a Frost mage. Anima powers. You're just getting Blazing Barrier when you polymorph. Soulbind. Then even more buffs to mage, and this is all specs. This one, Endurance Conduit. While inside Ice Block, you heal for 55% of your maximum health. And eventually it scales up to the point where it's 132% of your maximum health. Again, I'm not a fan of making DPS specs heal more, and they keep buffing. But it's inconsistent. Some DPS specs heal more. I don't know if it's in an attempt to equalize them with Demon Hunters and Fury Warriors when it comes to things like Torghast, right? Because Demon Hunters, Fury Warriors heal themselves for so much that they like ignore most of any solo PvE content like Torghast. So they're like reducing those ones healing and then trying to buff ones that didn't normally have it to make them all the same, where they can just ignore things in Torghast. Healing, there's no healing. Crowd control mobs. Pull smart. Use your utility. Not everything needs to heal. I don't like this. I really don't. If you're a mage, you like this, but obviously you like this, but I don't like the everything is healing for more stuff. Discipline of the Grove, Potency Conduit, Shifting Power, reduces your mage ability cooldowns by an additional 1,000 divided by 1,000 times 4. Don't know the math on that, or 4 seconds. It looks like a buff. You get more cooldown reduction, but you have to channel it the whole duration, so you get more and more and more cooldown reduction, so the value of getting the fully channeled ability becomes more important. Diverted energy, endurance conduit, your barriers heal you for 25% more damage. And you've got Triune Legendary to get 3 of these barriers that heal you for 25% of the damage. More healing. Yes, I'm sure mages love that they're more tanky. Flow of Time now reduces the cooldown of Blink by 2, up from 1. The scaling remains the same on it, about maybe it's like close to double. So more blinks. Healers are going to love that. Gift of the Lich, Potency Conduit. Deathborn's duration is increased by 6 seconds, up from 3, and its scaling was increased. I've honestly not seen a lot of attention to Necrolord Mage. I'm wondering if it's just going to like just fall off and be forgotten, because honestly, like, I haven't even thought about it at all, and I haven't really been seeing it in PvE or PvP. It's like, whatever happened to Necrolord Mage? Is this what's going to happen? Like, some covenants are just like, oh, that exists. Like, I honestly forgot it existed, but I got a buff. Grounding Surge, Finesse Conduit, successfully interrupting an enemy with Counterspell, reduces cooldown by 2.5 seconds, up from 1. The scaling was slightly reduced. I mean, if you're a mage, you love this. The Invisibility Conduit, which I really didn't think you were going to take in any content, because the utility here of these Finesse ones is so good. Lower Blink, lower Interrupt. Who cares? It moves slightly faster in Invisibility. I mean, it got buffed. At most, all this is going to do is let you maybe skip something in Torghast that you otherwise couldn't. But if it didn't matter that you skipped it, then you're literally just taking this conduit for nothing. I just, when it's competing with things like this, I don't even know how much you'd have to buff this. It'd probably have to be like a 200% movement and speed increase, and you tell your healer, like, dispel me, you go invis and then try and sheep with it. Like, it just, I don't see movement speed competing with interrupt reduction, or this is just mobility, but consistent mobility on a much shorter cooldown than invisibility itself. Ire of the Ascendant, Radiant Spark increases the damage. Radiant Spark getting a buff. That's a huge buff to things like Arcane, and its scaling got increased. Siphoned Malice, Potency Conduit. Each time a Mirror of Torment is consumed, your spell damage is increased by 2%, up from 1. In PvP, they basically killed Venthyr because it's on a timer. A mirror only goes off X amount of seconds, and then which gives healers time to dispel it, the person that it's on time to react, and it also just doesn't do any damage. It's like it has the biggest downside and counter with no benefit. They basically just killed off Venthyr Mage in PvP. I wouldn't recommend it. And then in PvE, this seems like it's an attempt to try and make it more appealing, but it was just like flattened out in the game overall. Tempest Barrier, Endurance Conduit. Gain a shield that absorbs 4% of your maximum health after you blink. Hey, they nerfed one part of the healing by 1%, and the scaling of it was reduced as well. This is basically just cauterizing Blink, right? As a Soulbind Conduit. Winter's Protection, Finesse Conduit. The cooldown of Ice Block was reduced by 25 seconds, down from 30. The scaling was dramatically reduced, probably so that you didn't get like these big Ice Block windows, so you like always had an Ice Block for a big raid mechanic. I mean, 90 seconds off the cooldown of Ice Block of Frost as well is pretty big. And if you played Night Fae, if you can reduce it even further, it would have been pretty dramatic. So Mage overall, if you're Frost, you're having a good time. You're having a good time. Now, Shadow Priest, but I say Priest in general, this is the one that people were like, hey, what happened to Priest? Am I still going to be able to play it? Discipline got some nerfs to its AoE. Powered Shield Enhancement is increased by 13% on their Exhaustion Potency Conduits. Its scaling was increased. Pain Transformation, Potency Conduit, Pain Suppression also heals you for more. It got buffed slightly. Its scaling was increased. Again, you got a single target Potency Conduit trying to compete with an AoE conduit, so this one has to be really good if it's ever going to hope to compete with an AoE one in PvE. And then in PvP, you actually do value the single one more than an AoE one. This is going to be a huge balancing concern. Shining Radiance got buffed, so maybe a Radiance build in PvP, but also just Radiance healing in general increased dramatically. Swift Penitence. The damage of healing of your first ball of Penance is increased now, and its scaling was increased, so maybe some more synergies with the legendary effects for Discipline, Priest, and Penance. This has to be a typo. I mean, Holy Priest was bad, but I don't think it was like this bad. Holy Word Serenity now has 25 charges, so Serenity is basically lay on hands, instant cast heal. You can do it 25 times and has a 25% reduced cooldown. There's no way that's real. I don't. This is just, it's in the game in the beta, but I don't think that's going to end up happening. We see buffs to conduits to increase preventive healing for holy. We see buffs to reduce the cooldown of your holy wards. We see buffs to increase guardian spirit healing. This is good for holy. Holy needs buffs. Maybe not 25 charges, but holy overall, its conduits getting buffed. Shadow, we see nerf to Devouring Plague, nerfs to the synergies, just nerfs to Mind Flay. Big nerf to Auspicious Spirits talents, where now they're only doing 15% increased damage, but they generate a little bit more insanity. These were the changes that people were really asking me, like, hey, does this mean Shadow's done for? Shadow's damage is still good. It was a top performer in PvE. It's still a top performer in PvP. To me, in PvP, where Shadow Priest is over excelling is its tankiness. Powered Shield heals too much. Shadowman heals too much. Vampiric Embrace heals too much. Devouring Plague heals too much. It just generally heals too much. You have Desperate Prayer for defense, Greater Fade for defense, Dispersion for defense. You've got way too many options. You're too passively tanky. That is the problem for Shadow Priest. Please don't nerf its damage into the ground to the point where it doesn't do anything except it's invincible. So it's good, and you see it in 3v3 until 80% dampening, because it can kill something at 80% dampening and still is immortal. I really don't want to see that happen. I really don't want to see that happen. Is it, after this recent round of changes, bad? Is Shadow bad after this recent round of changes? No. It's not going to be bad. You're still going to be able to play it. It's still going to be good. However, I'm really hoping that the nerfs that they apply to it are focused on its defense and not its offense, because they have done a really good job with Shadow Priest. I don't want them to destroy the spec and turn it into this immortality second healer thing in PvP, or bring its damage down to a point where you don't see it in PvE after all of the attention and love that it got. That's my big concern with Shadow. And that's going to be it here for the update here. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave it with a like. Comment down below with your thoughts or what classes you'd like for me to cover next on these changes. Stay subscribed to the channel if you like the content I'm uploading daily, to try and keep you in the know and the how and the where and the when it comes to everything Shadowlands. If that type of content interests you, I've got tier lists, I've got class recommendations, trying to help out everybody figure out what's going on, because this is like a yo-yo where it's like 10 yo-yos at the same time of what's happening, which spec is good, and I'm just trying to keep some clarity amongst the chaos. Thank you again very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.